Welcome back. We have a key race alert right now in Virginia. 61% of the vote is in. Ralph Northam, the lieutenant governor, the Democratic candidate, building up his lead over the Republican Ed Gillespie. Right now, Northam has 51.2% to Ed Gillespie, 47.6%. He's ahead by 56,000 votes. Let's go over to John King here at the Magic Wall. You're looking at some key counties. If you're Ed Gillespie, the Republican candidate, what does he need to do right now? Can he come back?
Can he come back? No, is the short answer as you look at this. And I don't mean that we haven't counted all the votes yet, but if you look at this, he's doing what he needs to do in these small rural counties, running it up with big numbers. But Wolf, look, most of the vote is in these rural counties, and it's not a lot of votes. If you look, you're winning with 68% of the vote. You're winning here with 80% of the vote. There's just not a lot of votes out here for Ed Gillespie. And here's what's happening if you look at the race. Doing what he needs to do here, but look at this. For a Republican to win statewide in today's Virginia, the population growth up here in the D.C. suburbs, you have to either win or break even, just barely lose. Loudoun County, he's losing by 20 points almost in Loudoun County. You have to do better in Fairfax County. You're not going to win Fairfax County if you're the Republican, but you can't get blown out like that. Republicans to win statewide in Virginia, they'll tell you you probably have to win Prince William County. Again, if you lose it, it has to be 50-49, not 60-39. So in the vote-rich D.C. suburbs, Ralph Northam is running it up. This is also key. Down here in Richmond, Democratic base, the capital city, African-American turnout, the Richmond suburbs. One more quick one for you, Wolf. Down here, Ralph Northam lives in Norfolk. We don't even have any votes from Norfolk yet. He's winning in Virginia Beach. The Republican won here 4 years ago. This map is filling in a big Democratic way.
Looks like a very, very big night for the Democrats. So, John, we've got a major projection right now. And CNN projects that Ralph Northam, the lieutenant governor of Virginia, will be elected governor of Virginia, beating the Republican candidate Ed Gillespie. The Democrats continue to win in Virginia. Ralph Northam will be the next governor of Virginia. Let's go over to Brianna Keeler. She's over at Northam headquarters right now. The projection has been made. Brianna.
Well, and there's a delay here, Wolf, so it's about to be made, and you're going to hear this crowd going wild right now. But they were going wild earlier when you asked John King, could Gillespie come back from this, and he said no. There were a lot of nerves coming from Democrats backing Ralph Northam, and that was because they thought the social issues, Confederate monuments, might actually play in favor of Ed Gillespie, and in the end they feel like it didn't, that he would have benefited if he'd stuck to more of an economic message, and then in the end sort of going towards more of the culture wars and some of the positions backed by President Trump didn't do Ed Gillespie well, but they were certainly worried that it could be the reverse, Wolf.
All right, Brianna, stand by. We're going to get back to you. I want to go over to Jake and Dan. A big win for the Democrats in Virginia and in New Jersey.
Democrats have not had a good night in quite some time, and this is going to be good for them. Not only, of course, did they pick up that governor's race in New Jersey, which CNN is projecting, and that was 8 years of a Republican in that seat before that. Now, of course, in a very competitive state, or Commonwealth rather, of Virginia, CNN projecting the Ralph Northam, the Democratic lieutenant governor, will win. And it has to be seen to a degree, I think, as a rejection of President Trump, who is the strongest prevailing political figure in the country. If you look at who turned out, according to the exit polls, and how often people who supported Trump voted for Gillespie, and how often people who opposed Trump voted for Northam, that is a very strong sign of a rejection of Trump. But also the campaign that Ed Gillespie, who as Dan and I were talking about earlier, is pretty much up until the last 2 months known as a member of the Republican establishment, somebody who worked for George W. Bush's White House, somebody who was the Republican National Committee chairman, but in the last couple months ran a campaign, at least when it comes to the television ad campaigns, that was very much devoted not to a message of jobs and not to a message of tourism in Virginia or education, but a message of culture wars and issues that divide people, especially in Virginia, where there was that horrific murder by a white supremacist of a protester in the Charlottesville riots. So I do think to a degree this has to be perceived that way. It's just one state. It's a Democratic-leaning state. This is not the entire nation, but it's a good night for Democrats, and I think a rejection to a degree of Trump, and perhaps even more than Trump, Trumpism.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was going to say. I'm not so sure how much we can say it is a rejection of Trump per se, since he didn't win there.
Or campaign.
Or campaign there, very much. Oh, well,
for Gillespie, I mean. For
excuse
Gillespie.
me, he didn't campaign for Gillespie. He did some robocalls But last year, a year ago, it is one of those blue states of late that he didn't turn red. But the question that you and I started talking about going into this evening is whether or not a Gillespie win would allow and really propel other Republicans who are going to be on the ballot next year to wrap themselves in the cultural Trumpism.
Yeah, and talk about MS-13.
About MS-13 and about immigration and so
yeah.
forth. And so the fact that Ed Gillespie, who was not a natural Trump-like candidate at all, did try that in the last few weeks, and it didn't win, will probably make a lot of Republicans who don't naturally fit into that think twice about it. But I do also think we should look at the Democratic side, because the question has been whether or not Democrats can get their act together and whether they can have a win. And the answer tonight is yes, and they did it with a candidate who was not the liberal darling, who wasn't the, for lack of a better way to say it, the Bernie Sanders kind of candidate. That kind of candidate, Tom Perriello, lost in the primary. So the Democrats won with a more moderate version of a candidate, and that also could be a suggestion to the party as they are really trying to find themselves. They're having a real identity crisis, that in a purple state, that's the kind of Democrat you run.
And remember, Wolf, there were five House seat special elections, or six possibly, and Democrats won one of them and lost five
Right.
in the competitive seats. So since Donald Trump won, Democrats have had bad election night after bad election night. Finally, Democrats have a good election.
Not tonight. Two important wins for the Democrats right now. Democrats have won the political races tonight in Virginia and New Jersey, the gubernatorial contest. Two more races, by the way, to go, and a major address by the President of the United States in Seoul, South Korea. It's all coming up.